So, I want you to try and imagine a scenario that honestly feels kind of impossible.
Okay.
Imagine you accidentally touch a hot stove. You pull your hand away quickly, right? And your skin stings, but, and here is the crazy part, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, like you feel absolutely no urge to complain about it. There is no inner voice calling you clumsy, no lingering frustration about, your ruined morning,
Wow.
right? There's no heavy sense of me that feels victimized by the pain. There is just a pure, silent, biological data point, like heat, withdrawal, end of story.
I mean, for most of us, that internal narrator,
Yeah.
that heavy emotional feeling that just constantly chatters away and claims all those experiences deeply your own, that's basically the loudest thing in our head.
Exactly. But what if it went almost completely quiet?
It's honestly difficult to even conceptualize. Like, we rely so heavily on the weight of our own internal monologue that the sheer absence of it sounds less like human psychology and more like, I don't know, science fiction.
Right. It sounds totally alien. But for today's deep dive, we are looking at a really fascinating, highly detailed first-hand account titled The Current Shape of a Thinned Sense of Self.
It's a brilliant text.
It really is. And the mission for this deep dive is actually very specific. We are going to look closely at this account, but we are absolutely not going to use spiritual or religious labels. So you won't hear words like enlightenment or non-duality today.
Which I should add is a deliberate choice by the author as well.
Yeah.
They argue that wrapping this kind of experience in mystical frameworks, it obscures what is literally happening on a mechanical, cognitive level. When we use those lofty terms, we stop asking questions about the actual neurobiology.
Right, so instead we're using concrete terms to explore the actual mechanics of human consciousness, like what makes an experience feel like it is truly yours. So, okay, let's unpack this, because reading through this source, it really doesn't read like a spiritual diary at all.
No, not at all.
It reads more like an engineer's manual, written for a totally different operating system for the human mind.
I think that's a really helpful framing. The author is meticulously documenting a fundamental redefinition of how we understand our own minds. And, well, to grasp this new operating system, we first need to look at the core hypothesis they present about the old one.
You mean the default system you and I are running right now?
Exactly. The one we're currently stuck with. We usually think of the self as a fixed entity, like a tiny pilot sitting in the cockpit behind our eyes, just pulling all the levers. But the author suggests that is a total illusion.
Yeah, they describe the self not as a thing, but as an adhesive sensation.
An adhesive, yes.
And they give a really specific breakdown of what this adhesive is actually made of. It's an overlap of bodily feelings, emotional residue, constant rumination, and memory tags.
Let's break down the mechanics of that adhesive, because it's super interesting. In normal human experience, there's a really distinct chain of events. A stimulus occurs. Say, someone cuts you off in traffic.
The word.
Right. Instantly, you have a bodily reaction. Your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, dumping adrenaline, spiking your heart rate. That physiological arousal translates into an emotion, usually anger.
Yeah, road rage.
Exactly. But then comes the crucial mechanism, which is rumination. Your
Ooh.
default mode network, the part of your brain responsible for mind-wandering and self-referential thought, it just hijacks the moment.
Oh, I know that feeling.
You start looping, how dare they do that to me? I am a safe driver. I was almost killed. And finally, all of that consolidates into a very dense self-narrative. I felt angry. I was wronged.
So it basically goes stimulus, bodily reaction, emotion, rumination, and boom, it solidifies into a heavy self-story.
Right.
But the sequence the author describes in their own mind is drastically shortened.
It's incredible.
So a stimulus occurs, a local signal fires, maybe a necessary biological response happens, and then it just fades.
It just disappears.
Yeah. The rumination loop never even activates. The author literally writes, the reaction occurs, but it fails to become a story about me.
Which means the default mode network isn't doing that binding work. The event isn't being tagged with autobiographical importance at all.
It makes me think of normal human experience as like a dry sponge. You spill water on the counter, drop the sponge on it, and it aggressively pulls all that liquid right into its core.
That's a great way to put it.
Every experience we have just sinks in so deeply, expanding our sense of self. But if the author's mind is no longer a sponge, I mean, is it more like a Teflon pan? Like, the experiences happen, but they just slide off without leaving a mark.
What's fascinating here is how the mechanics of a Teflon pan actually perfectly mirror the neurobiology they're describing.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Think about it. The pan still gets hot, meaning the central nervous system still fires. The food still hits the surface, meaning the external stimulus is processed. But the oil, the stickiness, is missing.
Ah.
For the author, that stickiness is the rumination and the emotional residue. Without it, things just slide away. It suggests something quite profound, honestly. The self might just be a verb.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a continuous process of clinging and storytelling that we constantly do, rather than a noun, a fixed soul or entity that we simply possess.
Wow. A verb, not a noun. We are constantly selfing all day long.
Exactly, we're selfing.
But wait, if they aren't selfing, if the experiences are just sliding off the Teflon pan, here's where it gets really interesting. Why doesn't this person just go sit in a dark room until they wither away?
Right.
If there's no strong, heavy feeling of me driving the bus, what is actually propelling them out of bed in the morning?
That's the exact paradox, isn't it? We operate under this assumption that without intense personal desire or a heavy dramatic self story, a human being would face complete paralysis.
Yeah, we think the pilot is absolutely required to fly the plane.
Exactly. But the author explicitly notes that outwardly, they function completely normally. They go to their job, they hold nuanced conversations, they make complex judgments, and they fulfill all their daily obligations.
They mention feeding their cat, which I love.
Yes.
They literally write, when the cat meows, the body stands up and opens the can. There is no I am a good pet owner narrative attached to the opening of the can. It just happens.
Right. And they still have reaction patterns, too. If a situation previously caused amusement, they still experience a brief spark of amusement.
So they aren't emotionless.
No, not at all.
Mhm.
If a situation requires concern, concern arises. But it's transient. It doesn't amplify into a lingering mood. They even still have attachments to the cat, to their family, to their art.
But the attachment exists without the panicked fear of loss.
Precisely.
It's just a relationship that exists purely in the present. They even talk about processing ethical reactions like guilt.
Oh, the guilt example is fascinating.
Yeah, if they make a mistake at work, they recognize it. They feel a twinge of guilt, but they process it purely as a factual error signal.
Like a notification on your phone.
Exactly. They correct a mistake, and it's done. They don't fall into a dramatic days-long spiral telling themselves what a terrible employee they are. It's wild to me.
It really challenges how we view productivity and motivation.
It sounds like a highly advanced car running on cruise control. The car is reading the GPS, it's braking for obstacles, it's stopping at red lights. But if you peer into the window, there's no stressed-out, white-knuckled driver gripping the steering wheel. The journey is flawless, but the driver's seat is completely empty.
I'd actually take that analogy a step further. It isn't just that the driver's seat is empty. It's that the car is running entirely on the momentum of existing infrastructure.
What do you mean?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it forces us to reconsider the actual driving forces of human behavior. Behaviorism and neuroscience both show us that a massive amount of our daily action isn't driven by conscious desire at all.
Really?
Yeah. It's driven by habit loops, encoded in the basal ganglia. It's driven by the roles we play, the promises we've made, and the cues in our external environment. Think about your own morning routine. Are you really propelled to the coffee maker by a profound, passionate expression of your deepest self?
No, definitely not.
Or are you just following a heavily grooved neurological track?
Wow. Yeah, I make coffee because that's the habit structure I've built. The structure just moves because it's configured to move.
Exactly. The behavioral system, constructed over decades, continues to operate perfectly well, even when the inner narrator stops shouting directions.
Okay, so outwardly, the cruise control is keeping them moving through society. But I really want to look under the hood at the engine because the source gets incredibly specific about physiological changes.
It does.
This isn't just a shift in perspective. Their actual biology seems to be running on different software, starting with their breathing.
The respiratory changes are one of the most concrete physiological markers they document. The author notes that their breathing has become extremely small, like a very low volume of air at a very low rate.
Right.
And yet, they don't feel oxygen-starved or suffocated in the slightest.
Which seems biologically counterintuitive. Like, why would losing your inner monologue change your oxygen requirements?
Because of the baseline tension in the nervous system. For the average person, that constant rumination we talked about earlier keeps the sympathetic nervous system quietly humming in the background all day.
Just constantly, slightly stressed.
Yeah. It's a low-grade fight-or-flight response to our own thoughts, And that requires metabolic energy. It creates physical tension in the chest and abdomen, which actually demands more oxygen.
Oh, wow.
The author notes that because the body is so entirely settled, because there is no persistent internal noise triggering that tension, their basal metabolic requirement for air literally drops.
That is insane. They say the need for breathing itself has just become weaker, and this unlinking of the mind and the body extends to how they experience pain and fatigue, too.
Nice, very clearly.
They're very clear that pain has not vanished. If their skin is injured, it hurts. But it is processed entirely as a local signal. It doesn't cascade.
We can map that directly onto brain function. When you get hurt, nociceptors send physical pain signals up to your somatosensory cortex. That's the basic, ouch, my hand is hot signal.
Right.
But the suffering, this is awful, I can't handle this, why me, part that is processed in the amygdala and the anterior cingulate cortex. For this author, the nociception happens, but the secondary amplification in those emotional centers just doesn't.
So it's literally just data arriving from a specific location.
Exactly.
And similarly, they say fatigue lacks that subjective feeling of total exhaustion. If they run a marathon, their physical performance will eventually drop because the muscles are tired. But that heavy, subjective complaint of, I am so exhausted, my soul is tired, I can't go on, that is entirely absent.
It's just muscle data.
Yeah.
It's just data. And the most striking cognitive shift might be how they experience memory.
Right.
We normally rely on what's called the somatic marker hypothesis.
Okay, what is that?
It's the idea that our brains tag memories with physiological sensations. So when you remember an embarrassing moment from high school, your stomach drops right now in the present.
Oh, yes, you physically cringe.
Exactly. But the author says their memories completely lack those bodily tags. There's no subjective ownership. They describe remembering their past as purely visual information.
Like pulling a file from a hard drive rather than reliving a piece of their soul.
Exactly. Even their interest in their future self is virtually absent. They plan for retirement, but it's just logistical math. It doesn't carry the emotional weight of my destiny.
Okay, look, I have to jump in and push back here for a second.
Go for it.
If pain is just raw data and memory is just pulling unfeeling visual files from a hard drive, and the future is just logistical math, well, aren't we just describing a biological robot?
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, I'm struggling to see the humanity in this. It sounds incredibly bleak to just be a meat machine processing local signals all day.
It's completely understandable why it sounds that way. And this raises an important question, and it's actually a trap the author explicitly warns readers about. We are so conditioned to equate our humanity with our suffering. We deeply believe that unless we are agonizing over a pain signal or weeping over a memory, we aren't truly experiencing life. But we have to rigorously differentiate between experiencing a signal and adding a layer of unnecessary torment to it.
But doesn't removing the torment remove the depth, like the texture of life?
Not necessarily. Think about the hot stove from the very beginning. The pain signal is necessary biological data.
Yeah.
It tells you to move your hand.
Right.
The suffering is the story you tell afterward. I ruin everything, my day is destroyed. The author's humanity remains completely intact in their understanding and their response. If a friend is crying, they still comfort them. They still take the appropriate, compassionate action.
They just don't freak out.
Exactly. What's vanished isn't the humanity, it's the static on the radio. The unnecessary mental amplification of the signal has been muted, so the actual broadcast is just incredibly clear.
So what does this all mean? Because on one hand, turning off the static sounds like an absolute superpower.
It really does.
If anxiety, lingering pain, and obsessive clinging are all drastically reduced, I mean, sign me up. But reading further into the source, the author is very clear that we should not idealize this state.
No, they are very grounded about it.
Yeah, every operating system has trade-offs, and they outline some pretty heavy hidden costs to living with a thinned self.
Very significant costs. It's almost a fundamental law of neurobiology. You can't selectively numb emotion.
Right.
The author is explicit that while the amplification of suffering is gone, the density of experience is also drastically thinner. The valleys are filled in, sure, but the peaks are flattened.
They use the term aesthetic afterglow, which I found really poetic.
That's a great phrase.
You know that feeling when you finish an incredible novel, or you listen to a soaring piece of music, or you just look out over a stunning landscape?
Yeah, that sense of awe.
Right, and that joy lingers in your chest for hours, just colors your whole day. The author notes that for them, the afterglow from a good manga or beautiful scenery fades almost instantly now.
Because the dopamine doesn't pool and linger.
Exactly. The resonance is incredibly weak.
And perhaps the most complex trade-off is the separation of empathy and understanding.
Oh, this part fascinated me.
Right.
They can completely understand someone else's suffering. They have cognitive empathy. So they recognize the distress, they understand the context, and they move to help. But the bodily resonance of empathy, actually feeling the other person's pain echoing inside their own nervous system, is almost entirely absent.
Yeah, we're talking about the difference between the prefrontal cortex, understanding a situation, and mirror neurons creating an effective physiological response.
It's just not triggering the body.
Right. For the author, their nervous system doesn't catch fire just because someone else is burning. They could assist you perfectly, but they aren't bleeding with you.
It really is a package deal, isn't it? It's like the emotional volume knob controls both the bad noise and the good music.
That's exactly it.
The exact same emotional and bodily adhesive that causes us to obsess and suffer is the adhesive that allows us to hold on to profound joy and deep, shared, empathetic pain. You simply can't turn down one without turning down the other.
Which points to a crucial reality the author really wants to emphasize. Surface reactions and inner absorption are two entirely different phenomena. You cannot know the inside of a person by just looking at the outside.
Because outwardly, the author looks totally normal. They are laughing at jokes, doing their work, comforting friends.
Right.
But inwardly, their world is startlingly light. It's thin.
Exactly. They might be comforting you, saying all the right things, but the internal friction that we usually assume accompanies that compassion simply isn't there for them. It's a really powerful reminder not to project our own internal mechanics onto the people around us.
Yeah, that's a huge lesson. We really have covered incredible ground today. We've explored a mind where the outward personality, the habits, the ethical responses, they all function flawlessly.
Totally intact.
But that inner adhesive, the heavy cocktail of emotional residue, rumination, and physiological pressure that makes an experience feel deeply mine, it has completely dried up. It is a mind operating on a vastly shortened sequence, where experiences just slide off the Teflon pan without leaving a sticky story behind.
And while the author does not recommend this specific thin state as a goal for everyone, their meticulous documentation serves as an extraordinary lens.
It really does.
It forces us to look critically at the machinery of our own consciousness.
Absolutely. And that is the profound takeaway I want you to carry with you from this deep dive. The next time you feel completely overwhelmed by an experience, or you find yourself caught in an exhausting spiral of anger or anxiety, just remember the mechanics we discussed today.
It's all about separating the parts.
Exactly. The initial physical reaction you had and the heavy, exhausting story your default mode network is spinning about it are two totally separate things. The stimulus is just a signal. The suffering is the rumination you are adding on top.
You might not be able to stop that initial biological signal from firing, but you do have some control over how much adhesive you apply to it afterward.
Which brings us to a final, lingering question to explore on your own. Think back to that loud, quiet internal narrator we started with. If your entire sense of self, your entire feeling of me, is truly just the friction of your reactions, the stickiness of your lingering emotions, and your constant exhausting rumination, well, actually, what exactly would be left of you if you simply decided to stop telling the story of what just happened?